Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Prophet Samuel 1, chapter 11, in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're going to watch an incredible transformation unfold today. You'll see a humble farmer turn into a fierce warrior king as he faces a truly impossible, terrifying ultimatum. Here is our quick roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the context and the threat, move into Saul's righteous anger, witness the massive victory at Jabesh Gilead, see the reaffirmation of his kingship, and finish up with some practical life lessons and a chapter recap.
All right, Section 1, Context and the Threat. Let's set the scene.
So right out of the gate in verse 1, we are hit with a massive crisis. A foreign king named Nahash the Ammonite marches right up and besieges the Israelite city of Jabesh Gilead. Now, the names and the geography here are super important to understand. In Hebrew, the name Nahash literally translates to snake or serpent. It's a name that perfectly captures his venomous and cruel nature. And why does he target Jabesh Gilead? Well, this specific Israelite town sits on the eastern side of the Jordan River. That means it's geographically cut off and isolated from the rest of the Israelite tribes. So they're surrounded, they're completely desperate, and the men of Jabesh call out to Nahash, saying, "Make a treaty with us and we will be subject to you." They are offering a total humiliating surrender just to save their own skin. But Nahash replies in verse 2 with a condition that is just horrifying. He tells them he'll only make a treaty on one specific condition. He gets to gouge out the right eye of every single man in the city. Now, you might be wondering, why the right eye? What's the point of that? To understand this, we have to look at how ancient warfare actually worked. A soldier back then held a heavy shield in his left hand, which pretty much covered the entire left side of his body and his left eye. Because of that, he relied entirely on his right eye to peek around the shield, spot the enemy, and aim his bow or thrust his sword. By taking out that right eye, Nahash would literally be blinding their ability to ever fight again. He's permanently neutralizing them as a military threat. Plus, as the text explicitly points out, walking around with one eye gouged out would bring a permanent, highly visible disgrace upon all of Israel. In verse 3, the elders of Jabesh Gilead make a desperate, last-ditch plea. They beg for a 7-day pause. They basically say, look, give us just 7 days to send messengers throughout all the borders of Israel, and if no one comes to rescue us by then, we'll come out and surrender to your terms. Notice the sheer arrogance of Nahash here. He is so utterly confident and so dismissive of Israel's strength that he actually agrees to this. He lets them send out messengers because he is entirely convinced that no one in a fractured, divided Israel is strong enough or united enough to actually come and rescue them. So now the clock is ticking. It's a literal 7-day countdown to mutilation and enslavement.
Moving on to Section 2, Saul's righteous anger. That 7-day clock is ticking.
Verses 4 and 5 paint a perfect picture of just how paralyzed the nation was at this point. The messengers scramble across the borders and finally arrive at Gibeah, which, by the way, happens to be Saul's hometown. When they report Nahash's horrific terms, the text tells us that all the people lifted up their voices and wept aloud. They are just totally paralyzed by despair. But I want you to contrast their reaction with Saul's. Right at that very moment, verse 5 tells us Saul comes walking in from the fields, walking behind his oxen. Now, wait a minute. Isn't Saul the newly anointed king? Why on earth is he out farming? Well, you have to remember that in this early stage of Israel's history, kingship wasn't about grand palaces and massive standing armies. Not yet. Saul is a humble leader who just went right back to his grueling daily labor as a farmer. He sees the commotion. He asks, what is wrong with the people? Why is everyone crying? And they repeat the terrifying news from Jabesh. And right here, in verse 6, we hit the crucial turning point of the entire chapter. When Saul heard their words, the Spirit of God came upon him in power, and he burned with anger. It's absolutely vital to understand what kind of anger this is. This isn't some petty, selfish rage or a guy losing his temper. No, this is righteous, divine anger rising up in the face of absolute evil and injustice. The Spirit of God here represents a sudden, divine empowerment for justice and leadership. In a single moment, it transforms Saul. He goes from being a quiet, humble farmer to a decisive, fiercely protective leader. He's no longer just Saul the farmer. He is fully stepping into his destiny as Saul the king. To wake up a fractured and terrified nation, Saul takes some extreme, and I mean shocking, action in verse 7. He takes his own pair of oxen, which is literally his livelihood, and he cuts them into pieces. Then he sends these bloody pieces with messengers throughout all the territory of Israel with a stark, terrifying proclamation. This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel. In the ancient Near East, cutting an animal into pieces was a very traditional, very serious way to make a covenant or an oath-binding threat. It sent a visceral, physical message that mere words never could. He is essentially declaring a mandatory national draft, telling them that anyone who cowers at home is going to see their own economic livelihood destroyed. And it works. The text says the terror of the Lord fell on the people, a profound sense of awe and urgency, and they turned out as one single man. Section 3, Victory at Jabesh Gilead. Let's look at the incredible response to Saul's call to arms. Just look at the statistics of this mobilization in verse 8. Saul gathers the troops at a place called Bezek. Geographically speaking, Bezek is a central gathering point, perfectly situated for an army that's getting ready to cross the Jordan River and march toward Jabesh. And the turnout is just massive. 300,000 men from Israel show up, alongside 30,000 men from Judah. It's actually really interesting that the text specifically lists Israel and Judah separately here. It's a subtle nod to the regional distinctions and tribal divisions that were already present in the land. And that makes this massive temporary unity even more impressive. Just a day or two earlier, these people were weeping in total despair, and now they are a unified, formidable army of 330,000 soldiers standing ready for their king's command. Verses 9 and 10 show us a brilliant piece of psychological warfare. Remember, we are now at the dawn of the final day of that terrifying 7-day countdown. Saul tells the messengers to run back to Jabesh Gilead with a promise. By the time the sun is hot tomorrow, you will be delivered. When the men of Jabesh hear this, you can imagine the tension just breaking. They're absolutely elated. So they decide to cleverly deceive their enemy. They shout down from their city walls to the Ammonites, "Hey, tomorrow we will surrender to you, and you can do to us whatever seems good to you." It's a total trick. It completely lowers the Ammonites' guard. It makes them think this psychological battle is already won, so they just relax, drop their defenses, and sleep soundly for the night. Then, in verse 11, comes the flawless execution of the battle plan. Saul pulls off a classic, brilliant military pincer movement. He splits his massive army into 3 separate divisions. They march straight through the dark of night and smash into the Ammonite camp during the last watch of the night. Now, in the ancient world, that's the darkest, coldest time just before dawn, exactly when the enemy is sleeping the deepest. This really proves that Saul isn't just a newly empowered farmer anymore. He's operating as a highly skilled, tactical military commander. The surprise attack is totally devastating. Saul's forces slaughter the Ammonites until the heat of the day, and the text notes that the survivors were completely scattered, so much so that no 2 of them were even left standing together. Just like that, the threat of the serpent, Nahash, is entirely neutralized. Let's move to Section 4, Reaffirming the Kingship. The military threat is completely crushed, but now we have to deal with the political aftermath.
In verses 12 and 13, we see a really sharp contrast in how the people handle this new power versus how the king handles it. Flush with this incredible victory, the people turn to the prophet Samuel and start demanding vengeance. They say, "Who was it that asked, 'Shall Saul reign over us? Bring those men to us and we will put them to death.'" They want to execute the internal troublemakers who doubted Saul before the battle. But Saul immediately steps in and stops them. He shows unbelievable restraint, wisdom, and true leadership. He declares, "No one shall be put to death today, for this day the Lord has rescued Israel." You see, true leadership isn't just about defeating your external enemies. It's about how you handle your internal critics when you have the upper hand. Saul refuses to use his new power to settle petty personal scores. He correctly gives all the credit for the victory to God, choosing grace over bloodshed.
Capitalizing on this amazing unified momentum, verses 14 and 15 bring the narrative to a close. The prophet Samuel says to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal and there reaffirm the kingship." So they all travel to Gilgal. Now, Gilgal isn't just a random spot on the map. It is a deeply significant historical site. It's the very place where Joshua and the Israelites first camped after crossing the Jordan River to enter the Promised Land. By choosing this specific location, Samuel is legitimizing Saul's reign, linking his brand new kingship directly to their ancient sacred history. There, in the presence of the Lord, they officially and joyfully confirm Saul as their undisputed king. They sacrifice fellowship offerings, which is a way of making peace with God and with each other, and Saul and all the Israelites throw a massive celebration. The fractured nation is finally truly whole.
Which brings us to Section 5, Lessons and Chapter Recap. As we look back at the literal events of Chapter 11,
what are the practical takeaways for us today? First, we really see the value of channeling anger into righteous, constructive action. Saul didn't just fly into a rage and lose control. He allowed the Spirit of God to use that anger to fix a terrible injustice. Second, this story beautifully illustrates the sheer power of unity. Think about it. A weeping, paralyzed, divided group of people transformed into an unstoppable force simply because they stood together. Third, and honestly maybe the most important, we learn about choosing mercy over revenge. When you are faced with critics and you finally have the upper hand, do you seek revenge? Or do you have the strength to choose mercy like Saul did? He had the power to wipe out his rivals, but he chose grace instead. Finally, it's a lesson in stepping up. When the moment demanded it, Saul left the plow behind and became the leader his people desperately needed.
So Saul has passed his very first great test with flying colors. He united the nation, he defeated a terrifying enemy, and he showed remarkable mercy to his rivals. But as the crown now rests securely on his head, it leaves us with a lingering question. Can a humble farmer maintain this incredible righteousness once the absolute power of the throne truly sets in? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.